Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode number 353, where we return from the final chapter of Time Eddy. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Depressed.
Whoa.
We've returned from the final chapter of Time Eddy. Or have we?
Are we still at Time Eddy?
Dun, dun!
Or as it's also known as, Where the Bleep is Eric Roberts Again.
We'll get to that. But first, did you guys do anything else this week?
I took full advantage of my movie pass.
Yeah, you did.
And thank you again for bringing it to me. I was quite happy to have that.
No problem.
We, obviously, down in Wichita, we stayed with a friend for a couple days and caught up, and that was a lot of fun. I don't get to see him very often. The movie pass arrived, and I am, as Glenn said, a spokesperson. I'm in love with this program. So we saw Geostorm. I love disaster flicks. I absolutely love disaster flicks. So, in many ways, the soft spot in my heart for these things will forever give even the bad ones a pass. And this is a bad one. It's a lot of fun. It's big. It's dumb. But it is fun. And then Sunday on our way out of town, we went and saw Blade Runner 2049.
How was that?
I'm going to preface this by saying, I'm going to shock a few people. I've never really been that big a fan of the original Blade Runner. It's okay. I appreciate it for what it is. I think it's very beautiful. It's a pretty film to look at.
I'm the same. I'm the exact same.
But I don't get, and I've watched it, 5 or 6 times, and I just don't see the allure that everybody goes gaga over this film. This one is amazing. It's a complete mind game, and it actually retconned a lot of the first film for me. It fixed a lot of things. It was like, oh, yeah, that works now. So I cannot recommend enough, and it's gorgeous. And Denis Villeneuve, who directed my favorite film from 2 years ago, The Arrival, is the director of this one, and it's just as visually amazing. Glenn will be mildly disappointed because Harrison is not in it nearly as much as I think they bill him to be.
How come? I'm not too surprised by that.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I wasn't going to go into it expecting him to be.
From a plot standpoint, it makes sense, and Ryan Gosling's really good. But yeah, very, very high marks on that one. And then today, Mel and I ran out and saw The Mountain Between Us with Idris Elba and Kate Winslet. And it's also very good. And much more than just a survival film. Other than that, just Time Eddy.
I didn't do much this week other than watch the 1970s version of The Island of Dr. Moreau, which was enjoyable.
You've been talking about that for a while. Get that one off your
Yeah, it's been on my list for ever since a couple years ago when I realized it existed. Luckily, it's available to stream for free on Vudu with ads. So I was able to, because our library doesn't have it, and I haven't been able to find it many places. It was pretty good for what it was. I mean, it's got that nice 70s feel to it, but isn't so like campy that it's horrible. I would, especially if you're a fan of the Island of Dr. Moreau's story or 70s kind of sci-fi monster movies, I would recommend it. If you're a huge fan of the Island of Dr. Moreau, I mean, you might have some issues with some plot direction they take, but surely it's better than the 90s version, right? What'd you do, Glenn?
Well,
how's your stack of movies going?
I added on to my 31 Days of Horror October Movie Challenge. Speaking of, Island of Dr. Moreau wasn't campy, but one that is my number 15 pick, which Blood in the title was the category, and I picked Blood of Dracula from 1957. American International produced film from the makers of I Was a Teenage Werewolf and I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. Pretty much in the same vein of campiness was Blood of Dracula. This girl goes to a girls' school and is hypnotized by one of the teachers to become a vampire. So, actually, it's one of those movies that it's so campy that I like it. It just oozed of that camp, so I liked it. For the 18th, which was a Vincent Price film, I did The Pit and the Pendulum. But it was good. It was really enjoyable. Talk about beautiful cinematography. For 19, childhood classic, I did The Gate from 1987, which I didn't realize stars a very, very young Stephen Dorff.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a 80s campy horror film. But a really good story, I thought. I thought it was quite enjoyable. For the 20th, Asian horror film. Sean says I cheated, but it was out of necessity
I'll
because
let y'all make up your minds. On
I
this
stayed with my aunt and uncle on Friday night, and we stayed up very late playing, not video games, playing card games and visiting and things like that. So I knew we wouldn't have a lot of time for a movie that night. And so I chose for Asian horror film, I chose a movie called Human Form. It's a 10-minute short film about a girl who lives in a society where everybody's getting plastic surgery and to make their faces up to almost cartoon looking. It's Korean, so it's very much in line with their culture. And she ends up not having enough money to do it herself because she's underage. Her parents won't let her do it unless she does it herself, and she goes to some back alley plastic surgeon, and things go awry. Then for Based on a True Story on Saturday, I did The Conjuring, which I don't know how on earth that was actually real. I mean, I've read the stories online about the couple that, did this, and they were, he's the only, allegedly the only authorized demonologist by the Catholic Church, and it has the sub-story of the Annabelle doll, which I think is a famous, demon story as well, which ends up being a spin-off film of this, but it's a good movie. I don't think it did really well. I mean, obviously it did well enough at the box office to have a sequel and 2 spin-off films, but I've heard a lot of critics complain about it. I thought it was a pretty decent film. It was intense. I think it could have been a little more intense had they done it in the sense of and I keep raving about this film, The Haunting in Connecticut. I think if they had done it more in the style that they did that one, I thought you saw the demon too frequently in The Conjuring, whereas if they had done more of that sleight of eye or quick camera movement type things or quick move past the camera, it would have been better. But it was good. And then for a remake last night, I watched 2007's Halloween, the Rob Zombie film.
You had never seen that one?
No, I had never seen it. And I've seen all of the Halloween films. And I watched it, and I quite liked it. I think it stays with the spirit of the original, but Rob Zombie does take some things and make the film his own, which is what he set out to do. And that's John Carpenter, because who's a good friend of Rob Zombie, said, if you're going to make this film, put your own stamp on it. And I think he really does. And that's it. I'm caught up.
Have you decided on your recommended by a friend?
I haven't. I've got a lot of recommendations, actually. I put out on Facebook. I did get a Facebook response from Brittany, I think is the only... Well, Chrissy responded on Facebook as well. But earlier in the week, Brittany had messaged me. So thank you, Brittany. And yes, thank you, Chrissy, for adding your response on there as well. I'm going to give it another day before I decide. That's it so far. Almost done. And the final stretch here. Well, let's move on to news.
Oh, there was quite the doozy of a news announcement made.
No.
Yeah. The BBC revealed details of the regular cast members for the next series of Doctor Who and told us when Easter Saturday, well, not specifically when Easter Saturday will be, but when we can expect Easter Saturday.
Right.
So
nowhere near Easter.
Nowhere near Easter. So we're going to have to wait another year for the series to come back. It'll be autumn 2018, and it'll kick off with a feature-length hour for the opening launch, and will consist of 10 50-minute episodes.
10 50-minute
So those
episodes.
radio time, or not the radio times, the mirror rumors were true.
No, they said 1 hour episodes. So
Oh.
they said 10 1 hour episodes. So
That's
they
true.
were almost
They
there.
were pretty close.
Well, not to mention Bradley Walsh has been bantered around for like almost 2 months now that he was going to be joining Jodie Whittaker in the TARDIS. I think the other interesting thing from this article is the fact that it doesn't specify that any of them are the companion, like how they announce a companion. They're just going to be reoccurring guests. So they really haven't specifically said that any one of them is going to be the main companion. If there will even indeed be a main companion.
It could be, they all could be the main companion, or they could take turns.
I have a feeling, though, that I think they want to avoid Crowdis TARDIS syndrome. I think just from some of the things that Chris Chibnall has said, that they want to stay away from that. So I wonder if it'll be one of those things where they aren't really traveling with the Doctor, but they all have interact with the Doctor over the course of the 10
That could
episodes. They also
So-
kind of say it'll be more of an arc, a story arc series, so it might be
yes.
episodic, as in, kind of instead of having every once in a while a monster of the week. It sounds like all of these will be interconnected,
Yeah. So
serialized. That's what they call
the
it.
cast is Bradley Walsh as Graham, Tozin Cole. Is that right? Tozin?
I think it's Tozin.
Tozin Cole as Ryan, and Mandip Gill as Yasmin. And then also in the series, as a returning role, is Sharon D. Clark.
I don't know any of these people.
So Bradley Walsh has been around for quite a while, and has done a lot of stuff, but
I believe he was on Coronation Street years
He's been on-
years ago, back in the early 2000s.
he's been on Coronation Street, he's been on Law & Order UK, he was in a story arc of the Sarah Jane Adventures, playing in The Day of the Clown, kind of the bad guy in that, and he currently hosts a couple of ITV game shows. Mandip Gill has been in the soap opera Hollyoaks, as well as others, including Doctors. And Tozin Cole was in The Cut and EastEnders, E20, and Hollyoaks.
And Sharon D. Clark was actually on EastEnders as well.
Which I was just going. They didn't give any details of this person, other than she's going to be there too. I assume they think everyone knows who she is.
Well, not knowing who any of these people are, I'm just going to say, welcome to the Team TARDIS, and I hope you can act.
I think it's really encouraging also that the fact that there's now, in addition to a female Doctor, there's a nice diverse cast there.
There is a very diverse cast. That's something to be excited about, I think.
Yeah, having, other than seeing the one guy in the Sarah Jane Adventures, there's nothing else I really know them from, so I can't get too excited, and it's hard telling. At least Bradley Walsh says he remembers watching William Hartnell as the first Doctor, so he at least has been familiar with the show and has been around for a while.
I think they'll all be fine choices. I mean, how many other actors and actresses that we never heard of that were announced for Doctor Who, and they were just did just fine. So
Oh, yeah.
we fell in love with them. So it'll be more of the same.
Absolutely.
If you're in the UK, I'm sure you recognize these people more than we do here in the US. But
There's no John Hurt.
they're not John.
But who is? Apparently, Tozin was in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, he played an X-wing pilot, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then he's going to be great.
So there's another.
So he has been in something you've seen.
There's another Star Wars connection to Doctor Who.
Are we, I don't know, are we concerned at all about, this is going to sound like a strange question coming from the guy who's kind of been, okay, I'm done with Moffat, I'm ready for him to go away. I am excited for Chibnall to come in and bring something fresh to the role. I'm excited for Jodie Whittaker to
All right,
come
quick
in and bring something
qualifying
fresh
and
to the
get to your question.
Is anybody else concerned that maybe it's too much change all at once?
No.
That we're changing
Nope.
the format, we're changing the length
It's
of
not
episodes.
that much of a format.
It's not much of a format change. We're getting 2 less episodes this season. They haven't announced. No, we're getting 2 because it's 10 episodes because it's 12 episodes in a normal season.
Right.
The
They've
13th
already
episode
scaled it
is
back
always
one already.
the Christmas episode, and they just haven't announced that they're doing a Christmas episode yet, which is typical. They don't always within the year of announcements say 12 episodes plus we're doing a Christmas one. They've done that in the past. They've said 12 episodes coming out. They're not changing much other than the time of year, but we have had Doctor Who release in the autumn in years in the past. And I don't see anything different about this other than, we got a new showrunner, we've got a new doctor, and we've got a new companion. Well, I'll tell you what, when Matt Smith came along, we had a new showrunner, we had a new doctor, we had 2 new companions, although we didn't know it right away.
And now we're also going to an arc format.
We are going to an arc format, but we've been going to an arc format for a while. So
I think that's debatable, but
I think that Doctor Who's become slowly more serialized in the past years. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great change of pace. There are a lot of people that have soured on Doctor Who over the last 2 or 3 years. I think because they feel it's become stagnant, I think this is a great idea. I'm not worried about it at all.
Okay,
And knowing Chris, knowing Chris
curious.
Chibnall's record with other series, he's had some that haven't been great, but Broadchurch has done really well, and I've liked the way that he's produced and run it. So I think it'll be good.
I think so too.
No worries from you either?
Not
You've
to
seen
mention-
Broadchurch, so
I've
you
seen
probably
all
have
the
a little more
Broadchurch,
faith in
so-
them than-
Not to mention, we always have, out of 12 episodes, we always have one or
Couple
two
of
that we go,
stinkers.
oh, those are stinkers. Maybe
That's-
it'll just eliminate the stinkers.
That's what I was just about to bring that up.
It won't feel like filler episodes like
Yeah.
we've said in the past.
But that could also mean we might not have some of those one-off random fun episodes where they're the opposite. It's the same, fills the same hole as a stinker, but isn't a stinker. You know what I mean?
I think that if Chibnall does it right, they're all going to be fun. So,
I think they're all gonna be good,
I don't
yeah.
think it matters.
We'll find out in autumn 2018.
What else in the news, Keith?
That's pretty much it. I thought I'd give a little shout out for the Goodreads Book Club poll for November is currently up, and so you can go and weigh in.
What about feedback? Any feedback
No
this week?
feedback
No
this week.
feedback this week.
But
well,
remember, you can send us feedback by going to our website at travelingthevortex.com and fill out the Send Us Feedback tab, or send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com.
might have been slow feedback-wise this week because they knew we were going to Time Eddy, and so we aren't reviewing anything for anybody to chime in on.
That, and it was a little quicker of a turnaround between episodes.
It was because we recorded late last week. Not too much later though, because
Couple days.
It was only because we recorded on Tuesday last week. We're recording on Monday,
And you
this
got it
week,
out
so-
sooner than you thought you
Yeah,
did, too.
that's right.
So.
All right, well, let's move on to our review
Of
Oh,
Time
wait.
Eddy.
of Time Eddy. We're going to talk a little bit about Time Eddy, the Doctor Who convention in its last year in Wichita at the this year
Supposed last year.
at the Drury Plaza at Broadview. Is that what it's called, or is it just Drury Broadmoor? No, Broadview. It's definitely Broadview.
Broadview.
Is it at Broadview or just Broadview? Drury
I don't
in
know. I'm
Drury
looking it up
Plaza,
now. Hold on.
Broadview.
The Drury downtown.
Anyway, it's this old historic hotel that they've refurbished, and I thought it was beautiful.
It was
Wonderful.
nice. It was a great
wonderful
hotel.
venue. The rooms were terrific.
The
My room
Drury
was
Plaza Hotel, Broadview, Wichita.
There you go. Great room, great venue, great location. Near down Old Town, downtown Wichita.
Right off the Riverwalk.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
on the river. What did you guys think of this year's Time Eddy?
I thought it was a great show. They continue to put on a high-quality convention, despite any setbacks they might have had.
Yeah, and there were a few. There were a few.
Yeah.
Aside from getting a cancellation of the Doctor just a few weeks ago, which Sylvester McCoy unfortunately had prior commitments, they also unfortunately lost Andrew Cartmell this weekend. They didn't lose him like he disappeared in the hotel somewhere and they couldn't
They
find
didn't
him.
lose him like we lost Sylvester.
They lost him because they had a
Why you gotta bring that up?
they had flight issues with his flight, and so he wasn't able to make it until Monday. They had to delay until
Which would have
Monday.
done so much good.
So he ended up having to cancel. And then day by day, we weren't sure if we were going to get Eric Roberts, and that was a whole different issue. But oh well.
Depends on who you ask of the reason of it, but
Anyway, so I didn't get
But
to
they
see
did a
Eric
great
Roberts
job
again,
adjusting
and
and
I'm not,
adapting.
I am not disappointed one bit.
All in all, it's great. You're right. The hotel was great. The volunteers were great. I feel if you're listening, and I've been assured by multiple people that I did in closing ceremonies, I may have forgotten to thank the volunteers and staff of Time Eddy. I know I thanked the organizers, but I do not remember if I thanked the volunteers, and I fear that I may have forgotten to do that. It was not meant to be an oversight at all. The staff at Time Eddy deserves a gargantuan thank you and a huge round of applause because they did a phenomenal job.
yeah, the entire staff and volunteers did a great job, and in addition to the guests adapting and accommodating for those missing gaps and rearranging the schedules, and like Katie Manning, who got sick and still plowed on.
Yeah, the
and
poor woman ended up
went
with
to the hospital.
walking pneumonia is what
Yeah.
they diagnosed her with. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I wouldn't
what
let
she
her
was-
kiss on Jim
That's
if I had
what
to
she was
realize
fighting
that.
off. No, apparently, whatever she had was bronchial and was not contagious. They
Oh, that's
assured
good.
her of that. And what the pneumonia was, it was a certain type of pneumonia, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's based on that bronchial issue she had, which was completely viral. It was not
Oh,
contagious.
okay.
She and I chatted when I got her autographed, and she said, when I went to the doctor yesterday, they told me that it would be okay, that I wasn't contagious to be around people. She says, because if I was, I wouldn't be here today. And so, and she was hugging on everybody.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she was just the warmest person and the nicest, most genuine lady.
She really was.
She really, really
And
was.
she doesn't feel like she's putting on an act or airs. She
No.
just genuinely enjoys life, loves people, enjoys talking to people. That's what made
Katie
the
brought,
con.
I think, quite a bit of herself to Iris Wildtime.
I think so. Except for, she does not drink.
That's the one difference.
She does not drink at all.
But you can't always tell that.
No. Well, she's high on life.
That's right, she is.
I'm pleased to report that she threw herself at me. And it was kind of awesome.
Well, let's start on Friday, which was kind of a down day for us because we kind of trickled in as we were able to become available on Friday. I think I arrived first, I believe.
At the
no,
con, yes.
Sean.
Well, I was
first.
already there in the city, but
that's
yeah,
right. Well, no, I got there even after you because I had to find out. I had to text you where to park.
Oh, that's right. You
But
did.
I had stopped to get lunch, and so Sean arrived first, got our table set up, got everything there. I showed up probably not long after that, because you texted me, said you'd only been there about 10 minutes when I was looking for the hotel. I arrived, and then Keith and Sarah came in. You and Mel had come in early. Then Keith and Sarah had come in later that afternoon.
Yeah.
And we just kind of spent time at our table and chatted with people. But before Keith and Sarah arrived, Katie Manning come around, just walking around to see what was going on in the outskirts because the dealer's room was in kind of the center of the convention, and this one ballroom that was blocked off, a pretty good sized ballroom blocked off for the exhibit hall. And then there was another one of the presentation halls, which was labeled Mondas, was in one end of that ballroom that was sectioned off. And so it was its own little place. And then across the hall on the other side was Telos, which was the other panel room. And then around the perimeter of the two ballrooms in the center was where all of the, well, not all of them, but on the one side was where all the special groups, like KPTS was there in the hall. We were in the hall. TopCon was in the hall. Wibbly Wobbly Tommy Wimey was there with their props, the
all of
sets
those
that they had made.
props
So those kind of people were on that perimeter hallway. And
Those
so
props were great.
Those
Yeah,
props
they
were
really
great.
cool.
And so Katie Manning walked that perimeter area to kind of see what was going on, and she saw Sean and Mel and I sitting there, and she came over and said hi and gave us all hugs. And she was just this nice, warm lady, a little peck on the cheek, and then she went on, and we were like, I mean, we'd only been there like an hour, and Sean and I were like already going, "Oh, that was awesome! Wow!" Talk about intimate, meeting people and running into people. And so then Keith and Sarah arrived, and of course, then anytime you saw Katie, she was smiling and talking. Well, then I come down the hall. I think this was Friday. I come down the hall, and Katie's on her way to a panel, but she has stopped because she has gravitated to Gemma.
Yeah. Every time Katie saw Gemma, she came and oohed and awed over her and just loved all over her. And
Were the pictures that you posted with her holding her, was that from that first night?
No,
Or
that was
later?
Sunday.
That's what I wondered because I think it was just kind of a brief stop and goo goo gaga all over the baby there.
every time.
The
and
first
then,
time.
Like
and
the
then
second
went on
time, she
into
was
her
like, "Can I
panel.
get a picture with her?" And like tomorrow, when I look a little bit better, because it was like the end of the day on
Right.
Saturday, and so
Oh,
like,
she asked you if she could get a
think
picture
she
with
did,
you?
yeah.
Wow.
Or Sarah asked, one of the two, I can't
Yeah,
remember,
yeah,
but it was. She was like, "Yeah, well, let me get my face fixed, and then I'll do it." And so we wound up getting that Sunday, like near the end of the
That was
convention.
terrific.
Yeah,
That was terrific. Anyway,
but she wasn't the only one to stop and ooh and ah over Gemma. William Russell did too.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't ooh and ah?
That's true.
Oh, she's adorable.
She was the hit of the con. She was the real celebrity.
So Friday night, we separated because I actually went out and stayed with some family.
First, we sat in on Ben's panel.
Oh, we did. Let's
for
talk
the
a
Seventh
little bit about
Doctor
Ben's panel.
novels, and I thought he did was a really well done, a really interesting conversation.
Of course, what was the first thing I said when I went there? I said, I don't want to sit in on this panel because I haven't even read any. I've only read like 5 or 6 of the Virgin New Adventure books. I don't want to be spoiled. Even though, He did kind of give some details away about the books. He never really spoiled anything
I don't feel
other
I
than
was
kind of
spoiled
giving
on
like
anything.
plot detail, not plot details,
He gave more
summaries,
teases, so it made you want to read these books.
Yeah, what do they call that? It's not a it's a summary. Synopsis. That's what he was kind of giving of each one. And I was real that hour. I mean, they're 50 minutes. That 50 minutes went by like that.
Yeah, it did.
Because I really did think I like Ben. He's great, and he's really interesting. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Doctor Who, and it's fun to sit and talk and listen to him. But I went into that with that little bit of every panel where, how much of this is going to interest me? How long can you really talk about books only about, Doctor Who? How interesting is it? And I sat down there and then it was over and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like we've been in here long enough. Keep going. Even though he had got to the end of the run. But yeah, it was quite interesting. And the neat thing was he was handing around. He has copies of the books. Which some of these are hard to get and out of print, and
these are
expensive.
His second copies.
This is his second set of copies, and he passed them around so we could flip through them, look at the covers, look at the backs, the spines, and it was really neat, kind of hands-on presentation. I quite enjoyed it.
It was really neat, and it was cool that he also talked about like the Big Finish stuff and the novel adaptations that they've done, and kind of
the ones that connect to the Virgin New Adventure stuff,
how they've adapted them and different things about it. Really makes me wish we got to sit in on the last 2 years of his panels too, because it was so good.
I'm ready to read these books, and of course I sat there through the whole thing going, I don't know when I'm going to get these on the schedule. I don't know when I'm going to get these on the schedule.
Well, I saw you taking pictures of the groupies.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's Sean preparing.
Yeah, I was doing my homework, getting ready for it. So yeah, we'll get them on there at some point. But yeah, it really kind of whetted the appetite for it, and it was a really fascinating reading. It's kind of unfortunate that obviously Sylvester wasn't there, because this would have been a perfect tie-in for the Seventh Doctor run.
Well, even Andrew too, because Andrew wrote a few of those, and as Ben talked about, it was a springboard. Some of the things that were planted in the novels were the idea of the Cartmel master plan of where Cartmel kind of wanted to take it. And then Friday night, we split ways because I ended up going to some family and visiting them and seeing them.
We also split off. We stayed with a friend of mine who lives down there, and I get to see him maybe once a year. So it was kind of cool to go and just hang. And what did you guys do? Being at the hotel and
we
really
just kind
enjoying
of
it.
Hung out at the hotel. We went and wandered around a mall nearby.
So our Saturday started with... I don't know. I was keyed up, not from lack of sleep, although that certainly played into it, but by what may have wound up being the last presentation of the Great
before
Travel
that,
of the
we
Vortex
attended Timey Wimey Puppet Show.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because Mike
was earlier.
Mike was earlier in that, and puts on a wonderful show. Wasn't much different than what you and I had already seen at British Fest. There were fight tweaks, but
with new details.
yes, they had. They definitely have new details.
New information from the show can change his show quickly.
That's certainly true.
Which I enjoyed seeing a lot of the changes that I helped give input in for. Because that thing Sarah and I went to, however long ago, I think before Galley this year.
I think it was at the beginning of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a preview thing that let us kind of give him some feedback, and it was nice to see some of the same stuff still in there, which was pretty cool. Such a good show.
Timey Wimey's always great. And again, if you are in the Kansas City area, go check out Mike. He's the director at, I'm going to forget the name of the theater now, so I probably should have brought that up.
Meisner Puppet Theater.
Meisner Puppet Theater. Thank you for having that readily available in your mental filing cabinet.
It's on my to-do list at some point. Gemma was but surprisingly transfixed by the puppet show for a little bit. I mean, 3.5-month-old attention span is what it is. But
she was riveted.
She was riveted for quite a while, and I think that's the only panel she actually sat through.
Yeah.
So that's the only one Sarah got to see.
Well, that little girl was good.
Yours, that's for sure.
That little girl was good all week. She
really
long.
was.
Now she got fussy every once in a while, but that's a 3-month-old baby.
Yeah.
When they're hungry, they're hungry. When they need change, they need change.
Yeah.
But she was remarkably good.
She was really good. And of course, we got the pictures with the Peter Capaldi puppet after the fact, which
I saw that.
She didn't know. Gemma didn't quite know what to make of that. But it's such a good show, such a good puppet show.
Then, of course, we did what you were leading into that I crudely interrupted you with.
The possible last showcasing of the Great Traveling the Vortex.
Well, I've decided after this weekend, if you want a Quizmaster, I'm ready to do a whole bunch more.
Oh, well, then, okay. Well, because I'll be honest, after we got done, I immediately began revamping it in my head. I started coming up with ways to improve it for the next time.
That's what we got to do.
I guess
that's how that show survives. But.
I guess we'll do it again, maybe, if we get invited back somewhere. We have some ideas.
Well, I think that this year's this convention show, to me, and maybe it's because I was in a different role and I saw it from a different perspective, felt the most energetic, felt the most complete. Like we weren't saying. I don't think we were second guess. Of course, now this is the fourth time we've done the show, right?
We're a bit more familiar with what we're supposed.
But Sean and I actually switched parts, and I don't know. I had more fun with it this time. I enjoyed it.
My
a lot
role was
more.
a lot of fun. That's why I didn't understand why you didn't want to do it.
I think you had less pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
that's why you enjoyed it more.
That could
now
be.
That,
I did.
I'm in your shoes. I understand
less.
why you don't want to do it anymore.
I had a lot less pressure. Not to mention, though, that I don't know. I felt more engaged with the audience this time. Maybe I am so focused on questioning that I don't get as engaged.
Well,
I thought we had a great audience. This is the best audience I think
audience
that we've had. Yeah. It was, and again, I know we said this last year. When you've got a room full of Whovians, a Doctor Who related quiz is always going to go over much better. And I thought our contestants were wonderful, which we should mention. We met up with Kirk and his daughter. No, we met up with Kirk and his son Patrick.
Yes,
who actually won didn't win, but got the passes for Time Eddy that we gave out because of the pledge drive. And he met us, Saturday morning, and we caught up with them. And then this was not fixed at all. We promise you, because we do a competition to get our contestants. But both he and Patrick ended up on the panel of the quiz show, which I think was kind of cool that they were there. So. And then one other guy named Bruce. See, I really do remember your name, Bruce. It's all part of the skit.
Except it wasn't Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce was the last guy. The Dalek guy?
Gary.
See, I'm just that good. I knew that, but I was carrying that stick over.
Bruce was the name.
No,
of the
I really did.
I really
did forget.
the movie.
I really did forget Gary, and that's exactly what it is. It's
why you
because
chose
of Bruce.
I thought you were going with it. Was Gary one of the sharks in Finding Nemo? I thought you were carrying that over.
No, Bruce was the name of the shark.
I knew that. Yeah.
No. I was going with Bruce, the ambulance driver. That was the one question we couldn't remember. We went over the quiz show before because Sean had come up with new questions, and so he was asking us our opinions on the questions. And I think Keith and I answered every one of them right, except for we could not remember the name of the ambulance driver that the Master possesses in Doctor Who the movie. It was right there on the tip of my brain, but I just couldn't get it. It wasn't until you said Bruce. I was like, of course it's Bruce.
So here I go into the thing, and I think, man, this is going to be the great question. And Gary just rattles it off. It was Bruce. So, you're kind of sucking the fun out of this for me, Gary.
Gary,
he was on.
He was really.
You had the right balance, I think, of questions too. I think that you had the uber easy ones for them to answer early on, and I think they progressively got harder. And that last set of questions was challenging for them. There was genuinely stumped them on some of them, which I think works really well.
Hit that.
Well, thank you.
Hard difficulty, and
I think I need to throw a few more of the difficult ones in, maybe a little earlier. But we'll work on the balance of it and get it.
Well, we didn't end up into the 20s either, which I was fearing that they were going to be so easy
to print twos.
Because we didn't print.
I had a plan ready. Just in
did
case.
you?
Oh, good.
I went and got one of the pieces of paper and wrote a 2 on it, and so I could put it in there if I had to.
Keith's got his part down. He hasn't switched from the beginning.
He is well versed on his role in the quiz show. But talking with Gary afterwards, he mentioned that he was much more of a classic Who fan than a new Who fan, and that we'd kind of had, because as you find with a quiz show type environment, that when you go to a non-Doctor Who con, you almost have to front load it with new Who questions, and so that's kind of what I felt like I did. I mean, we had some classic stuff in there, but he said he was fearing that a little bit because he's much more versed in the classic than he is in the new series.
Even then, some of the people that were in like the groups to try to join the show, I was worried wouldn't get any of the classic questions because they were some of the younger people.
But overall, I think it went very well. And if you're amenable to doing it again, I will certainly host and be quizmaster, and I will augment some questions, and I have a few ideas for revamping a little bit of sequencing that I think will make it flow better.
Well, I hope I remembered all of my parts entryway.
You did better than I did last year. So. Or at least last time we did it. Was that Planet Comic-Con?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
It was Planet Comic-Con.
I was a bad actor on the stage play last time. I dropped lines left and right. So. But everybody seemed to have a good time, and I got several people in the hall afterwards that thanked me and said that was really a lot of fun. So.
Mike's partner, and I always forget his name.
Corwin
came up to us and said, really enjoyed that, was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's high marks from two guys that do a puppet show that is nothing but hilarious and funny and fun.
Yeah.
So. And then after that, of course, we had a panel in the late afternoon, early evening almost, with Matthew Waterhouse and I almost called her Irish Wild Time. Which she is, Katie Manning, which was called Travels in the TARDIS. So what was it called?
What did we call it, Sean? You wrote it.
He wrote it, but he can't remember it.
Yeah.
His brain's mushed.
It was
Anyway,
Travels in the TARDIS. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, wonderful panel. I had so much fun. And the interesting thing about that thing is because Katie was not feeling well, she came late to the panel. And here's one of the things. Matthew comes in, he sits down, and he apologizes for it and says she's going to be 2 or 3 minutes late, that we can go ahead and get started.
Partially also because they added an extra panel
right,
on her
because
just
she had
on Iris
an Iris Wild Time
at
panel
4 o'clock,
prior to that.
the hour before us.
And she needed a rest between.
I cannot fathom, we didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but I cannot fathom Katie Manning doing a 50-minute Iris Wild Time panel without breaking into Iris
I'm
Wild
certain
Time.
she
did it when she was just with us.
And to have probably sustained that for, it wouldn't surprise me at all if she conducted the entire panel as Iris.
Yeah, I thought that too.
And doing that while sick, and getting over her bronchial thing, I don't blame her for needing a bit of a break at all.
Oh, no. I wouldn't have blamed her for just completely skipping.
So anyway, we had Matthew Waterhouse there, and he made his apologies, and then we went ahead and started with him and started talking. And I don't think she showed up until about halfway through, right?
Yeah,
which she was racing, which was probably a good thing because we got a lot of good questions in there with Matthew, and he's such an interesting man. He had a lot of great things to say, very unique and interesting things, stuff that I learned about him and learned about Adric in the meantime. Because a lot of times as panel or as moderators, we go into these, we kind of do our research and we know enough Doctor Who, that we know a lot of things, we know a lot of behind the same things. And so you always go in and you try to ask those questions that some people might not know, but you also try to stick to some of the questions that will. And I always seem to learn a little something, but with him, I sort of garnered more that I have in any sort of the past interviews or things that I've read behind the scenes of him. And so I was really grateful. Plus, he's a very engaging storyteller and a lot of fun, and he's funny too. Funny guy. It's a good thing, though, because then Katie showed up, and she came up, and almost for the second half of the panel didn't give him a word edge.
It became the Katie show, and
not
not many other people
spoke
with Katie.
But it worked out so well, because he did get his time for about the first half of the panel, and then she got all the rest of the time.
But they had such a great dynamic.
They did have a great dynamic together, and they would play off of each other terrifically. It was a lot of fun.
And I want to go on record now saying I've previously said that Adric is probably my least favorite companion. Maybe not in so many words, but I've been pretty vocal about it. Matthew Waterhouse at this con, for me, was what Sylvester McCoy did for Glenn at Galley the first time he saw him. I am completely in the Waterhouse camp now.
Yeah.
The guy he's an amazing talent, and he was so much fun to talk to. And I was dreading this panel just a little bit because how do you tiptoe around some of those things that you kind of feel like you should ask, but, I don't want to, but, so how do you feel about the fact that a good chunk of fandom hates you? That's not a question you want to ask, but you just almost feel like you're obligated to do it because that's what, this character represents to many people. But I didn't have to. He made it very disarming and very easy to talk to him, and very thoughtful, detailed answers, and really took a lot of the pressure off me going into that, and I'm fascinated. He is a fascinating individual to talk to.
Yeah.
And I think it probably is one of the best interviews we've ever done, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And then Katie showing up in the second half is just kind of the icing on the cake, because now it's the wheels fall off of it and it becomes fun, whereas the first half is very, cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would agree. And it was one of the... I had heard so many stories of him being so kind of about Doctor Who and stayed away from the conventions for so long. But he was so enthusiastic about every story he told and so enthusiastic about the questions that I don't know if we repeated any questions from previous panels because we didn't get to go to those panels, but he did not give any impression that we had.
Just that one time, because he had talked about the
Big
Finish thing.
Yes.
But because he wanted to relate that to a question I had asked earlier about regeneration, he worked in really quick. In fact, probably what took him 5 minutes to talk about in the last panel, he summed that up in like 30 seconds and then related it to what we were talking about for our panel, which I was quite impressed by.
So was I. But the fact that he was just so enthusiastic about everything that we asked him, and I was a little worried that it was going to be a kind of pulling teeth interview, but it really wasn't. You gave him kind of a nugget, and he just took off and ran with it.
Those are always the best interview too.
Yeah, he's just a great interview. I don't think it matters who does it. I think he just will give a good interview.
I would agree with that. And then Katie showed up. And she threw herself at me.
She is a warm, charming woman and very funny. And we probably had to ask very few things because she would just launch in and talk about everything and anything. And it was a lot of fun just to sit and listen to her talk. So.
And she threw herself at me.
She did throw herself at you.
Somebody else commented.
Sort of.
No, she fell into my lap.
But she didn't really throw herself at you. She threw herself
backwards
into your direction.
Well, it could have been at you, but you chose not to sit there. So somebody else commented. They said, Katie throws herself at everybody, right? And I said, I don't care. She threw herself at me. That's how I'm telling the story. And she complimented me on my legs. So that's a bonus.
Yep.
See, you can't argue with that
one. She
didn't
compliment on your legs.
She commented on your legs.
She commented on your legs and said she liked your legs, but she didn't compliment your legs.
She liked my legs. That is a compliment.
She likes legs, is what she said.
Well, she likes men's legs in shorts specifically.
Right, but she wasn't really
She was holding my leg at the time she said it.
She wasn't complimenting your legs because you have knobby knees, but she apparently that's appealing to her. So she wasn't really complimenting me. She commented them and she liked them. So.
Well, she can comment on my legs anytime
and fall onto your lap.
And she did.
As often as she wants to. Huh?
Waterhouse started telling a story and she kind of rolled her eyes like, it's going to be that story, and kind of started to feign backwards. And I was prepared, but not knowing the length to which she was going to carry that joke. And she did. She just kind of threw herself into my lap sideways, and it was a good thing that I had my arm positioned where it was on the back of the chair, because I almost dropped her not knowing how far into my lap she was going to wind up going. But it was a good panel.
And of course, we're definitely going to release this panel on the feed, so you'll be able to have a chance to listen to this as well.
No video, unfortunately.
No video.
There's pictures, though. There are pictures of her kind of starting to do the lean.
And then Saturday night, I think we kind of winded down. We didn't do much more con stuff that night. We talked again we should mention, we ran into Robert over the weekend, who was
friend of the show, author Robert Collins.
He was selling his books at this show, and he's actually trying to move the rest of his stock because he's done, as he had mentioned to us before. He's
done with con
presentations. He's still going to write, but he's done with doing cons. We chatted with him a little bit over the course of the 3 days. We ran into him a lot, talked to him. But I wanted to mention that we did see him.
I joked with him that on Sunday that we need to figure out a con. We need to plan this out where we can both attend a con where I'm not working and he's not working, so that we can actually spend some time together and enjoy the con.
Right. So Saturday night we kind of winded down. We went to the what was it called? Kickback. Had some dinner there, which by the time I ate penne, because we talked about going to dinner, but by the time I ate penne, hot dog, nachos, baked potato, it was sour cream and butter and
3 drinks.
Yeah, and 3 drinks, 3 alcoholic drinks. I was good. I was good to go.
Yeah.
So I had dinner already paid for. So we decided to stick around the con. Now I was kind of tired. After 3 drinks, they were kind of hitting me too, and I was kind of knackered. So I decided to go up to the room for a while. I think you and Mel went sat in the hot tub, didn't you?
We did. We made it up to the pool in the hot tub area, which was really nice. And then it's kind of up on the second floor, but it looks out over the roof. And it wasn't until, I don't know, halfway through the thing I realized there's an outdoor hot tub as well, like out on the roof. Now, of course, Saturday night there was a thunderstorm moving through, and there were some huge arcs of lightning out there, and I kind of thought, well, I'm not outside. In fact, there were a couple, even from inside in the windows, that I thought, I don't know if I should be up here. But the hot tub felt so good, I didn't care. It was
what'd you guys
nice
do? You
pool.
just went up to the room?
We
and
just went up
rested
to the
a little
room
bit?
for a little bit, and then Jimmy got restless, so we came down.
And then, of course, we met back up then with Kirk and Patrick, and we played the Doctor Who card game because
Classic Doctor's Edition.
Keith has the classic Doctor's Edition plus the 12th
12
Doctor
Doctor's expansion. Which let us play 5 players instead of just 4.
Right. So that was kind of handy. And we had a lot of fun. We had some
frustration
with the rules of the game.
Yes.
But overall, I thought that was quite enjoyable. We had a lot of fun. Of course, we turned in for the night. Then after that,
I don't think some frustrations with the game quite covers it, but okay, we'll be polite and say that.
Everybody's mad because I won. So then
That's why he's
that
forgiving
is
us, because he
true.
won.
So Sunday,
Very true.
Sunday, we didn't have any commitments in the morning except for Sean, who did a panel. You tell us a little bit about the panel that you surprisingly moderated.
Surprisingly moderated. I say surprising, and I even made a comment at the panel. I was like, I wish they'd have told me I was the moderator, because I showed up for it just expecting that I was helping out, and then apparently I was in charge of it. If I had actually paid any attention to the materials sent to me by Time Eddy, I probably would have realized that. But instead, in typical Sean fashion, I ignored everything until I went and printed off the panel listings and went, apparently I'm on that panel, and just ignored it from, so it's my own fault. But we did. We had a panel and talked spinoffs, everything from K9 and Company to the Sarah Jane Adventures to Torchwood to Class, and it went okay. It took a little bit to kind of direct the conversation, and which again is my own fault because I didn't know I was moderating it. Had I gone into that a little more prepared, I think it would have been a better panel. So I'll take the blame for that one. But I think once we got rolling, I think it was an interesting discussion on where things have been and what's ones we'd like to see. I think pretty much unanimously across the board, everybody wants to see a Paternoster Gang spinoff. So
That was the one thing that came out of that one. For sure.
that was a big one. But it was fun.
And then we wound down the day by, I think, just hanging out and talking to people, walking the floor again.
Wound down the day.
I made
first
some,
thing in the morning we did that.
Well, I mean, between that and I made a
last
few
panel.
purchases before I had to go. Got my autographs. Chatted with Matthew and Katie again on Sunday. Then we had the Ian Chesterton,
Yes.
played by William Russell.
The original, you might say.
And I tell you, for 93, he's still really with it.
Oh, I didn't realize he was that old until I got home. I mean, we had to talk aloud because he has, the hearing's going because he's up there a bit. We did have to also, when anybody asked questions, we did have to kind of relay the questions to him because there was no mic system, unfortunately, for the audience. But yeah, he was a real interesting, warm, gracious man, and told some really interesting stories. I think some things have left him as far as his memory because he didn't really have a lot to say about specific things. If you asked him about, well, what's your best memory of this, but he did talk warmly about Jacqueline, but it was a little heartbreaking because he talked a little bit about there towards the end of her life when she got sick, she was being a little bit put offish, and he didn't realize why. But in talking to friends later, she was doing that to everybody because she knew that she was sick, and she really didn't want anybody else to have to deal with that. So I thought that was kind of sad, but interesting.
It was sad.
I'd never heard that before.
He was also very diplomatic.
He was very diplomatic.
I found quite endearing, and I don't know. It didn't surprise me at all because I think so much of Ian comes from William Russell, and Ian is the knight, the chivalrous, the height of that. And so when specific questions were asked about Bill Hartnell, And we all know, we've all heard the stories that he was a little difficult to deal with, and that was as much as he would admit to, was that he was kind of set in how he liked to do things. But he went on and on and on about how warm he was, and kind of the only dirt, if you will, that was ever dished was that he felt it was unfair that Hartnell had been typecast as this grumpy sergeant major type character, and that was probably what carried over into his personality a little bit. Was because of all the acting that he'd done that way. Mm-hmm. That was probably the most gossipy piece of information you could get out of him.
Well,
everything else was warm and inviting.
Everything was warm and inviting and positive, and he always had positive things to say about everybody that was asked questions, except for that one parking attendant. And he really... You can tell he's still bothered by that years later.
He's downright bitter about that.
That was one of the most animated stories he told, too.
I think it's terrific that it worked out that he's the one that ends up playing the parking attendant with the card in An Adventure in Time and Space. And that is because it's connected to something that affected him some years ago. But, grand time. It was really nice to talk to him. And then he stayed at, actually, that panel table and finished signing autographs because he was worn out. He was tired.
And it was the end of the convention. I couldn't blame
for the most part. Because now, that being said, I'm going to have you guys carry on from here. And the reason being is because I actually had talked to my wife early in the morning. She'd been sick all week. And Sunday morning she was feeling really bad and still hadn't been out of bed yet. And there was a lot of laundry and things to do around the house to catch up. So I went ahead and took off after that panel, and you guys took care of closing ceremonies.
How is Holly doing, by the way?
She's doing a lot better today. She went to the doctor. She went to urgent care yesterday. Finally got to urgent care yesterday afternoon. And she's got a really bad sore throat, and she got a strep test. But the initial results didn't show strep, but they want to do the extended results to make sure she doesn't have it. But when I got home last night, she had no voice. She couldn't talk. She couldn't breathe through her nose. So she's just, but she's feeling a lot better today. So
well, that's good.
Yeah, that is good. Well, we just kind of hung out a little bit, and then Sean gave a very lovely speech for closing ceremonies.
Thank you.
Very, very heartwarming and nice and touching. Of course, called up all the guests up to say a final word, and it was all very nice and kind of sad. And when we all went home, it was not a lot happened after you left.
I have a fantastic photo of course, we're in the corner where the public television station had set up. They were doing their bumpers with Matthew and Katie, and then they both apparently played pinball.
Oh.
So I've got a photo.
We didn't even talk about the pinball.
We didn't even talk about the pinball machine. And you know what? Here's the really funny and sad thing. I didn't get to play it.
I didn't play it either.
I sat next to that thing all
I
weekend.
did.
All
and
weekend
didn't
long.
Play the Doctor Who pinball machine.
But had you ever played it before?
No.
So now you have joined the group of actually playing the Doctor Who pinball machine.
And it was totally worth it.
Well, we didn't play that one.
Easier.
We played that years ago. Yeah, the digital one was way easier.
And I'll say this too. I talked with the guy quite a bit about it, and I'm so envious because he got a sweetheart steel deal on this thing.
He was telling me about it
and
too.
it's in great shape compared to some of them. He said he's had to put a little polish on the playing field, but he said he's going to go in and put some LEDs in it and kind of replace the lighting kit and stuff so it doesn't run as hot. And he's thinking about maybe redesigning the elevator section just so it doesn't jam up because apparently it is prone to do that. But it's getting hard to get parts for him. But yeah, beautiful piece of material. I have a fantastic photo. I haven't posted any of my photos, if anybody's wondering. There are tons and tons of photos. Mel was a trooper. She took pictures all weekend long for us. I just haven't offloaded any of them to my computer yet, so we will have those up. But there's a really great one of Matthew Waterhouse playing Doctor Who pinball, which is just
that's pretty awesome.
So, but yeah, closing ceremonies was.
This was the actual first closing ceremonies I've ever been to. Period.
Closing ceremonies are one of those kind of odd duck things that, and not Phil, but just in general. Seeing them at Galley, it's the definite end cap. It's the closing ceremonies of the Olympics. This is it. This is the end. So here's all the stuff, and kind of giving you that one last chance to be with those people. And so they're always a little bittersweet. And this one in particular, I didn't plan much going into it because I really wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. It took being there and kind of soaking up the con and sitting there at the table and people watching and interacting with the guests and being on these panels before I kind of realized, I'm sorry, this sucks. This is the last one. This genuinely sucks, because I have really appreciated and grown to love this con so much. And so I kind of treated it like I treat most of my groomsmen speeches at weddings. I just kind of winged it, and I thought it came out okay.
It was good.
Thank you. But I did make Lisa cry, so that was a bonus.
All weekend long, every time she passed Sean, don't make me cry. Don't make me cry.
Realistically, I could have said boo, and she would have fallen apart. It was a rough weekend for her emotionally to be at the end of this, but I think it went pretty well, and it was, I mean, having Dominic and Matthew and Katie and William there, and the people who stayed and hung out for it, and kind of getting that last.
There was that sense once your speech was done, and it was kind of like, all right, that's it, go home. Everybody just kind of mingled still, like they didn't want to go home. It was one of those.
Like, you're not the boss of me. I'm not leaving yet.
Yeah,
it was one of those conventions too. You just really didn't feel like you wanted to leave. And
that sums it up. I didn't want to leave. You run into those cons where you get it. I don't want to go. I opened with this is the end, but the moment has been prepared for, and I got booed. So it's kind of awesome.
And then he followed that up with no tears, Sarah Jane.
But like I said, I think it went well. And you run those cons where sometimes you get to the end of the con, and it's like, man, I am so ready to get out of here and go home. And you get those other cons where this has that galley feel, where even after closing ceremonies at galley, Mel and I would kind of take that one last up and down the hall. There's no panels going on. There's nobody still there. It's just people filing out. This is the end. And you just want to soak up as much of it as you can. And then they start bringing the mallets out and breaking apart the TARDIS. And it's like, okay, I'm done. I can't stay here anymore.
Yeah, that was kind of a hard part after we had walked through the vendor's room after it had closed several times and seen the console getting taken apart. Because that's when those Katie Manning pictures were being taken. So it was, that part was a little tough to see.
We did have one amazing fun moment, only pseudocon related, waiting for closing ceremonies. Mel grabs me and she says, you know how to tie a bow tie, right? And I went, like a bow tie? She goes, yeah. I said, no. Mine are all clip-ons. Why? And she turns and points. There was a wedding that was at the hotel that was going to be that Sunday. And, of course, my initial reaction when I saw the sign was like, oh, God, they scheduled another wedding on the same weekend as a sci-fi convention. That was bad planning, because we've all had that happen. But the groom is standing there with a genuine bow tie that they apparently sent from the tux place. He goes, I don't know how to do this. And I went, Keith knows. So I went running down the hall and I grabbed Keith and I was like, you know how to tie a bow tie, right? And he goes, no. So what do you mean, no?
I have instructions at home with my bow tie.
The 11th Doctor is your doctor. You got to know how to tie a bow tie. No, I don't know how to do that. So I went running into what was left of the dealer's room, which had already started to be quiet. I said, everybody, I need your attention. Doctor Who fans, right? Does anybody know how to tie a bow tie? Blank stares across the hall. And I'm like, seriously? And one woman said, well, my husband does. Where is he? And she was the one running the photo booth. Well, he had gone around to get the car. So we waited, and she calls him, and she says, where are you at? No, just drop everything, pull up to the side of the building, get in here. They need your help with a bow tie. Yes, really, it's for a wedding. So he came running in. I was like, are you the expert? And he goes, not really. Good, come here. And we grabbed the room, and he got the tie on. So we had this, you would think, in a Doctor Who convention of all places,
somebody would know how to
do it. And we finally found one. So that was the 15 minutes of panic that kind of, I think, took my mind off what I was going to say at the closing ceremonies, trying to help this guy out. But apparently the wedding went off without a hitch, so that was the fun part of that. But no, it was a good con, and it was
it's going to be so sad next year not to have one, because it's one of those conventions that I got to share an elevator with Matthew Waterhouse. That's no other convention have I ever got to have that sort of experience. Yeah. And it's going to be sad not to have it again.
Or seeing him at breakfast, or just that. You just don't get that at the big ones.
You don't. Mm-hmm. You don't. Well, we'll really miss it, but on to other things, I suppose. All right. Anything else we need to chat about this week? Do you want to talk about what's coming up on the schedule?
Next week on the schedule, our Friday Night Who presentation, which is our weekly Doctor Who watch-along, we'll be back on track since we don't have a con next weekend, is State of Decay, which Matthew Waterhouse was very excited to talk about that one in his panel because he really likes it, and I really like it, so that's a perfect Halloween one for us. And then our review for the podcast next week, we'll be back to reviewing things. I've got to get busy reading. We've got a plethora of Lethbridge Stewart stuff. We're going back into the Candy Jar universe. We've got 2 short stories, the Two Brigadiers, and I can't remember the title of the other one. Saved my life.
The Cruel Oil.
The Cruel Oil. And then we're also going to be covering Daughters of Earth. So we're back on track with working our way through the Lethbridge Stewart verse. So if you are interested in that, please come back for that. And if you've read them, send in your feedback and let us know what you thought of those.
And we'll probably dip into the Goodreads book club and see if anybody's left some reviews on there, and we can read those out as well.
We will.
All right. Well, of course, if you can, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. You can support us on Patreon. Just go to travelingthevortex.com, click on the Patreon button on the right-hand side of the screen. As we said before, if we could, if we had 1,000 listeners and each one of you could just send $1, we'd have money to, support servers and be able to go to these cons and things like that. It's just $1 a month is very, very helpful in everything we do for this podcast. So please consider, even if it's just something like $1 or $2 a month. All right, anything else we need to talk about before we finish this show, fellas?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much to everybody associated with Time Eddy III. You have given us memories for a lifetime.
If that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.